Hey there folks, did you know within Night City, in the northern part of Watson, it boasts overhead traffic signs that don't display location information as you'd expect, but instead displays weird weather data about smog, CO2, and air quality. But why? Well, to answer that, we have to explore all over this section of Watson for more weird signs, as I spent hours not just here, but all over Night City finding interesting details that reveal more about the game's lore and a view into CDPR's game development. And my adventure with this all started with these signs. First, the exact text on display here is not unique, as it appears in a few other vertical signs that have them scrolling by like a digital display, despite not being electronic, as these signs typically display the section of the city that a road is a part of or where it's leading to, such as being part of the industrial section or heading to San Francisco. And yes, I did shoot them just to make sure they weren't digital displays, just to be safe. Now, while we could assume that these are unique displays for air quality data or something, other signs here follow a similar pattern of weird displays, with messages like Spicy Salsa Night, Soul Night, and This floor is a worry-free zone. Now, if you're expecting me to connect this to some realistic aspect of a real-world traffic standard in some country on Earth, I'm sorry to disappoint, because I think these are just a bug. As much as I love the idea of someone buying up ad space for their Spicy Salsa Night in a font so small that you can't read it from the street, while forgetting to say where this Noche de Salsa Picante is actually located, there are unfortunately too many signs pointing to this being a weird oversight. You get it? Because it's about signs? To prove what these are, let's first focus on the ads. While it is true that Night City will plaster ads and notices everywhere, even going so far as to put ads literally on the roads themselves and on the curb, they usually have more tech and detail to them. These messages feel more appropriate like a bar or a club, not hanging over a street. Now, I have a theory about these signs, and it's that these were phrases for interior club signs or posters that just never got implemented, but the text remained in the game files. Then somehow they accidentally got mapped onto overhead street signs, which seems unlikely, but I have evidence. Looking back at the air data signs, don't they appear to be in a style more like those found in CSVs or comma-separated value files, where commas can be used to separate data into separate columns for use. However, in the event that you need to display commas, less common characters will be used to separate data instead, like the up caret, which just so happens to be used here. So this sign might have originally meant to look more like this and be displayed somewhere else, but it got here by accident somehow. And with that, we can also assume that something similar happened to these weird messages as well, somehow being set up to display on street signs where they don't really belong. But if that's not enough to convince you, consider the fact that in the same area, some signs are left completely blank, while others call this section of Night City Debug Watson, which is not a real place in lore. I did check. Something weird happened here during development, or in their rush to avoid another delay and more crunch, a developer made a mistake. So my headcanon on how we got these messages plastered next to completely incorrect traffic signs, seriously, you can't turn here, goes like this. Hey Geralt, you finished placing all those street sign markings in Cyberpunk 2077?
You're gonna be satisfied with what you get, or I'll feed you to the ravens.
Yeah, well, we need all hands on deck for this game, so too bad. Oh, and the game ships tomorrow, so chop chop.
Guess it's high time I got to work. I'm a witcher.
Okay, maybe that's not exactly what happened, but until CDPR explains how these messages got here, you can't prove that it didn't. Now, while those signs are just a weird bug, there is another detail that people think they know about, but one that hides a much darker story. The trees. Everyone knows that since real nature is rare in Night City, CDPR made it so only the rich get to bask in photosynthesis in the city center. But these terminals that are attached to some of the trees around Night City reveal something more. Now, before you click off because you think you know what these are, I know that Bandicoot highlighted these in his own excellent details video. I hadn't seen it until I started working on my own video, as I try to make sure to avoid highlighting the same stuff that other YouTubers have done, and his video was awesome. So I originally removed this detail from my first script, but while zooming all over Night City getting footage and investigating, this futuristic foliage kept bugging me. Most people assume that the tech trunk monitors the tree's health, but if that's the case, why don't these trees have them? Why don't the terminals outline any actual health details? And why are they only on the trees near the street? It's because they aren't trees at all. This terminal is not unique to trees. It can be found in Edgewood Farm and Lizzie's Bar, though the tree one does say Lifestream instead of Livestream, which is a nice touch. These terminals don't display nitrogen levels, pH, or oxygen concentration. Instead, it's tech infrastructure designed to look like a tree, so the Corpo Chums have a nicer street to look at. And I can back this claim up with the fact that we don't just have trees with terminals on them. Some trees just have tubes sticking out of them since they're likely just transformers that are disguised to hide in plain sight, as transformers tend to do. And then some other trees have this odd power bank looking thing that's attached to them. And then some other trees display holographic ads, and I'm pretty sure natural trees can't do that, though I'm betting Google's working on that. Now, dear viewer, after hearing that, you might be thinking,
Rave, that's ridiculous. Show me one example of a tech tower disguised as a tree. Okay, well, what about a palm tree? Okay, I bet you can't give 2 examples.
it turns out disguising infrastructure as palm trees is very common in California, which just so happens to be where Night City is located.
Coincidence? I think not!
These terminal-looking things are likely signal repeaters or surveillance hubs, which would explain why they're all stuck in a Stage 3 synchronization loop. The city's servers are just too overloaded to let them fully connect, since other terminals around the city say that servers can only hold around 80%, or maybe that's 90%, it's really hard to read, of expected users on an upcoming event call, which means Night City is trying to get some more storage space. I hope that justifies me revisiting a detail that Bandicoot covered, and check him out if you haven't already, but only after this video. Okay, that's enough about these, so let's make like a tree and get to the next point. All over Night City are eye-catching signs, and not just the ones that are talking about spicy salsa nights. And most of them are ads, like a tech CEO's wet dream. They really drive the point home that Night City is a dystopian nightmare obsessed with violence, pleasure, and money. And that's just what they communicate from a distance. I mean, have you ever stopped to look at them up close? And I don't mean staring at the titillating ones, you weirdo. Take this ad for real water, for example. At a glance, it masterfully displays the state of the world where clean water is a premium product costing 99 eddies or 50% more than a glass of whiskey. And it's a simple message. Water is rare and expensive, and that's all I took from this ad until making this video. However, looking closer reveals that what's being sold probably isn't even water. Notice that the real in the name is trademarked? That means it's a brand name, not a descriptor. It's like an extreme version of how Fruit Loops or Tyson Wings use misspellings because they legally can't call what they're selling fruit or wings. Then, notice the asterisk next to the price? Well, that's there because the fine print all the way down here says that the 99 eddies price is actually a discount, but just for the first 2 months. And of course, this discount does not apply to clients in Pacifica. You just know that some people in Night City signed up for this and then didn't even know about the price hike and just kept paying that reoccurring subscription over and over again. And that's pretty realistic since real-world finance can feel pretty dystopian at times, which is why I use today's sponsor, Rocket Money. Personally, I like to track my spending because if I don't, I'm definitely going to be spending way too much on snacks and energy drinks. Thankfully, Rocket Money helps me stay on top of all of my spending by giving me a singular view of all of my finances. Once I securely linked all of my monetary accounts, it created one simple dashboard, meaning I don't have to log into multiple sites just to see my overall financial health. I've got a checking account, a credit card, and an investment account, so it's nice to see everything in one place. But the absolute lifesaver is the subscription management. I'm usually tight about my money, so I didn't expect Rocket Money to find anything, but it caught 2 separate reoccurring payments to streaming sites that I signed up for at some point on just a free trial to catch one show. That was like $40 a month that was flying out the window. Rocket Money consolidated my charges into one clean list and even helped me cancel them right there within the app in just a couple of taps. It's completely free to download, but you can get a free premium trial right now if you sign up using my link. Just go to rocketmoney.com/ravegame or scan the QR code that's on screen right now, or go to the link down in the description. It can help you build up your savings and might just save you from paying subscriptions that you're not even using anymore like it did for me. Seriously, it's kind of embarrassing to realize I was just throwing $40 out the window monthly, so thanks for saving me money, Rocket Money, and thanks for sponsoring this video. Now, back to Night City. As for those pleasurable ads, there aren't really any hidden details to talk about despite my hours of, investigating for the video. Everything about them is pretty much in your face. What I did find, however, were the numerous warning labels on consumable products, like how orgiatic should not be consumed by those who are pregnant or looking to become pregnant. And I know that it's just a health food, but the advertising makes me think that it's getting consumed by some people who might be getting pregnant soon. But that's exactly how little advertisers of Night City would care for their mixed messaging. It's a perfect little detail. But my favorite warning labels are the ones that are on every ad for alcohol and cigarettes. They have huge spots dedicated to telling people that they can cause cancer, harm pregnancies, and lead to dangerous actions. I mean, look at how large that label is. The dystopian, consumer-unfriendly Night City is somehow more concerned about the health warnings than our own government in the USA right now? At best, our cigarette packs hide birth defect warnings on the side of packs in a font that nobody can really read, while advertising literal poison like it's the secret to enjoying life. And now, after seeing these in-game, I believe that we in the USA should at least make these types of labels the norm on cigarettes at the very minimum. These labels, while a cool detail, confused me at first, because why place them in a setting like Night City when the current day USA doesn't do warnings this extreme? Even Japan, another in-universe influence on the city, doesn't go this far and has text-only warnings. So is this just some weird, poorly thought out detail that ruins the atmosphere of the entire game? Well, no, of course not, because I dug deeper, and there was one last country I could look at for influence on these labels, which was Poland, CDPR's home. Turns out over there, the warnings are huge and include info on various health risks on cigarettes and even alcohol to a lesser extent. It seems to CDPR, advertising fake harmful products, they can let small warning labels slide. But even in video games, they want to make sure people know how bad smoking and drinking are for you, just like they do back home in Poland, and I think that's awesome. Next is a detail I forgot existed since I installed a mod that lets me teleport anywhere for footage gathering, and that's the fast travel kiosks. Instead of just having random tech towers with no meaning planted throughout the city, CDPR had the decency to give them an in-universe purpose as tourist terminals. Some of them even have a port that you can plug into and a credit chip scanner to pay for a combat cab to take you to a random intersection, or directly outside of Carrie Eurodyne's estate like a stalker, or to an abandoned mall to throw away any unwanted infants. Oh wait, I can't do that at this trash can. You get to live for now, Sean. Now, taxis aren't the only public transit available, and kiosks not the only fast travel either. There's also the NCART Monorail. With the 2.1 update, we can finally enjoy this lovely mode of transportation. And while I could go off on all the cool little touches on the inside of the trains, you've probably looked those up and down already yourself. Instead, I want to cover the rails themselves. Monorails get their name from the single or mono rail that the car is attached to, unlike conventional trains that use 2 or 3 rails. Night City gets this aesthetic on point, but the rails themselves actually make no sense. Take this branching point, for example. It looks like a standard train track change, but monorails don't work like that. Monorails instead attach to the beam via rubber wheels that hug the sides. If a monorail came to an intersection like this in-game, it would literally rip apart as the wheels try to go in opposite directions like it's trying to hit everyone in a trolley problem. It seems like CDPR understood the basic look of a monorail, but designed the tracks to look like those of a classic train, which does make sense when you consider that Poland, where CDPR is located, actually doesn't have any monorails. So I can't fault them for not looking into how they change tracks. I'd probably assume that they work the same as trains if I had, seen them at airports and Disneyland as a kid. And for those who are curious, this is how they actually work when changing tracks. It's way more complex and cooler than those of normal trains. A detail I think is intentional by CDPR, however, is the fact that in many spots, the track layout requires opposing directions of monorails to share the same track, which is super dangerous. For pedestrian use, real-world trains will usually have 2 different tracks separating trains going in opposite directions, and this makes a lot of sense as it's way more efficient and avoids having accidental head-on collisions. But in Night City, with their advanced tech, they may feel that they can avoid such issues. Or more likely, they just don't care about the safety of passengers. I mean, if a head-on collision occurs, that's just another construction contract for the megacorps. Now, originally, that was gonna be it for monorails in this video, but because I am cursed to notice everything road-related, I spotted this. Do you see it? Yep, this section of monorail located here is built into a reused road model. I have no idea why they did this, considering they did have a monorail mesh that they could have just continued to use. But instead, they just did this. Maybe this was gonna be a road originally, but at some point it got changed to a monorail and this model got left over? And considering that the developers made sure that at least one track lined up when they were transitioning back to the proper monorail mesh, I assume that they saw that the road model was being used, but just didn't have time to change it. I love to theorize why some design mistakes are left in the game and what they were originally gonna be, but I have no clue here. I guess I'll just add it to the list of things I'm gonna ask CDPR if I ever get a chance to interview them. But do let me know what you think is going on here, because I have no clue. Oh, and real quick, did you know when taking the monorail, a completely different instance and design of the railways are used? I know this because despite the fact that you can travel from Woolsden Street to the stadium, the monorail between those 2 points is completely unfinished. We should be flying off the tracks like the end of Batman Begins here. Okay, let's disembark and head down the street for a quickie. No, a quick detail, ya clown. In my last Cyberpunk video, I went into the realism of the crosswalks, but there was one detail about them that I had to cut for time, and it's that NPCs will actually start running if they're crossing when the crossing light warning is about to change. I said you run when it's about to change! There we go. Trying to make me look like the fool in my own video, aren't they? This is such a small detail that if I was making the game, I wouldn't have thought about adding, and most players are never even gonna notice it either, since they're probably just gonna drive through pedestrians on their way to strike out with Pan Am again. Yet they still took the time to add this detail, and it really makes the world feel alive with real people. And it's totally unrealistic. People don't speed up at crossings like this. They take their sweet time because they know I'm not gonna run them over when the light turns green, but one of these days I'm gonna do it, and oh, then they'll be sorry. Ooh, they'll win. Sorry, guess I got carried away there, but yeah, nice attention to detail there, CDPR. Okay, enough walking. Let's drive on over to my favorite detailed spot in the game. Yep, it's time to talk about the gas stations. These bad boys can fit so much detail in them, so let's start off by looking at the pumps. These pumps look familiar, yet high-tech. It's got a nozzle, a display, and a flammable gas warning, which isn't required IRL, but considering they explode so easily in-game, it makes sense for them to be included. Now, specifically looking at the display, we can see how much fuel is being pumped and how much it's going to cost in total and per gallon like many real gas pumps. A nice addition it has is showing how much fuel is left at the pump, and it displays the temperature, which may be representing the temperature that the fuel is being stored at, and that isn't actually a real thing in real life, but since the cars run on a fictional fuel called Choo-Choo, maybe it is needed to be stored at colder temperatures. Though, if this is used to display the actual temperature outside, since gasoline today isn't kept at any specific temperature, then that is really funny, because that would mean that California got real cold in 2077, since this number display cannot go into 2 digits, meaning it's always below freezing here. Now, the display does seem to lack a method to select one of the 5 different fuel types, which are regular, ultra, premium, plus, and gasoline, but this button right here probably opens up a submenu for you to be able to select which grade you want. Also, suck at anyone who said that gasoline wasn't used anymore in my first Cyberpunk video. I knew that these were gasoline distilleries. Alright, back on topic. The best detail here though is the keypad, and it shows that CDPR really cared about nailing the details of a spot most players won't even stop at, which I love them for. Now, I want you to really look at it. Do you notice anything weird about it? If not, look closely at the number 1. For some reason, it contains the letters Q and Z underneath it, despite the fact that last time I checked, they don't start the alphabet. If you check your cell phone, you can see that a typical keypad's lettering system starts on the number 2 and then goes from there in order. So why did CDPR put Q and Z under the 1? Well, that's because that's how many gas station number pads actually look in the USA, which means somebody at CDPR specifically checked what the number pads at American gas stations looked like instead of just Googling number pad and using whatever they find as a reference like I would have, because if they had, all of the references that would have been shown wouldn't have put the Q and Z under the 1. If you're curious why this was done in real life, it's because originally, rotary phones did not include the letters Q and Z because they were the least used letters. If they were on the keypads, the early computer systems would have needed to account for 2 keys possibly handling the role of 4 different letters rather than 3, and that adds a lot more computational complexity, so they just removed them. Since they couldn't assign it to the number 1 key, as that was reserved for internal call routing. When systems like ATMs and gas pumps required the potential use of all 26 letters though, designers assigned Q and Z to the 1 key since ATMs and pumps don't need to route calls and they could just add on to the existing computational letter mapping rather than remap what the number stood for by putting them in the correct alphabetical order. Look at that, you learned some cool tech history, and it's all thanks to CDPR's attention to detail. The last thing here are the fuel grades and prices, which none of them mean anything to me except for gasoline, as the rest of them are fictional mumbo-jumbo. I tried to approximate how much Choo-Choo would cost today, but all that we know about this fuel is that it's some kind of synthetic wheat alcohol, and today wheat alcohol goes for like $110 a gallon, so that's not comparable. Not to mention that the chemical formula for Choo-Choo is just branding and not at all related to the actual fuel itself. It isn't even a valid chemical formula, as I tried for a few minutes to make the chemistry work, but I couldn't do it. So all of this is completely worthless to us. But looking at the gasoline prices does show us how much it's been hit by inflation. Looking at the signage, the price of a gallon of gasoline is $15.90 in the year 2077. Today, however, in Morro Bay, California, the average price of a gallon of gasoline is about $4.60. But Night City's prices are in Eurodollars, while today we use USD. So we can't just use these prices to calculate inflation directly. However, I know the conversion rate between these two currencies, as according to the tabletop game Cyberpunk 2020, $1 is equal to $2. Now, if we assume that this conversion holds more or less in the year 2077, which is unlikely, but it's the best I can do, then we can conclude that a gallon of gasoline is worth $31.80 in 2077. That means between today and 2077, inflation was around 591%, or 3.86% a year, which is actually around the average rate of inflation here in the USA. So yet another amazing attention to detail. CDPR didn't just pick a randomly high price, they made this price very intentional, it seems. The last detail I want to talk about is, in my opinion, the most important one, with it being more of a thematic set of details rather than just one super deep dive. All throughout the game, the story of Night City beats you over the head with the fact that it's a fictional future where the rich take advantage of the poor, technological advancements have destroyed the land, the water is polluted, the government is in league with the megacorps, and you can't go 2 seconds without an advertisement being pushed in your face. If you got a mid-roll ad there, I'm sorry, I must have jinxed it. This kind of fictional theming is easy to see without trying, but CDPR put so much time to add small details around the city that fit this theme. Take Konpeki Plaza, for example, a location players are quite familiar with on the inside. But what about the exterior? Well, outside on the waterfront, it boasts something unexpectedly unique: wave barriers, or tetrapods. This helps keep the coastline safe from larger waves by displacing the force of the water rather than just blocking the hits thanks to their unique shape. And due to the climate issues the world is facing in the year 2077, extreme storms and waves have likely become much more of a common issue, even for the West Coast. But the fact that these are here isn't the interesting part. It's that they are only here in front of Konpeki Plaza. The rest of the coast is completely unprotected, because the rest of the coast isn't rich. And no, mounds of trash do not count as a form of wave protection. These structures represent selective protection, but the city also has selective oppression. Night City is filled with various hostile architecture designed to dissuade the displaced and homeless from using benches or slabs of concrete as places to sleep and rest. To survive, the desperate cling together in groups underneath bridges, or more dangerously, underneath collapsed Ferris wheels, which does not look stable to me, but hey, at least it provides some cover from the sun and the rain. Hey buddy, you know you're on fire, right? Stop, drop, and roll! The corrupt and immoral system of Night City holds no safety net. Those that can't survive the grind fall hard, ending up at the bottom where they're beaten down by the architecture and a total lack of helpful programs. But that doesn't mean that these people are not resourceful. For example, the fellow who, I guess you'd call it, owns this crate back here may not have much, though he does get a TV, and CDPR didn't just put a bed and a TV in here and call it a day. Okay, they kinda did, since they didn't include a screen to the TV, since you can't see this angle without mods. But they did fully connect it to an external antenna that sticks out of the side of the container and up on top of the crate. It's a small touch, but it really caught my eye, and it shows the ingenuity of the people that Night City tries to forget about. Now there's also details like market data being all over Night City and the huge class divide highlighting the greed within it. But you know who are the most oppressed groups within this city?
Gamers!
No, it's birds. How many birds have you seen in Night City? Outside of the Blade Runner Easter egg, the answer is none. Our feathered friends aren't missing just because CDPR couldn't get them to work without performance issues or bugs. Okay, that is probably why they didn't include the birds, but they made a lore reason to cover it: the Avian Extermination Act of 2063. This act eliminated all birds within an 18-mile radius of the city to prevent the spread of deadly zoonotic diseases. But CDPR didn't just write a quick lore bit and Control-X all the birds out of the game. They made sure to include a detail telling the history of the fight against the flying fiends. On various security cameras, you can see that they are still topped with something called bird spikes, or a common method to prevent birds from landing or nesting. And this same idea might be the reason behind a lot of different buildings having barbed wire around the roofs of them, though it's more likely that these are here to prevent people from getting up there. These spikes serve no purpose today in-game, but they were likely set up over a decade ago when the city was trying to first fight off the aggressive avians, and they were just never removed after the birds were eradicated. It's just one more hostile detail showing the true colors of a city where they'd rather just eliminate a problem rather than try to fix what is causing them and make things better for everyone, because it's way easier just to destroy, and the rich are shielded from all the negative ramifications of their choices. And I think that's the best detail of Night City. While it is an extreme depiction, it's one that shows throughout the game's aspects, both big and small, the horrors of a success at all cost, overly consumeristic society that doesn't care about anything beyond their own wallets. It sure is a good thing we don't live in a world like that, right? People are gonna start thinking I'm a huge socialist the way I'm talking, when I just think that capitalism can definitely go too far like any other economic system. Alright, with that, I've covered most of the details I found, because of course I did find more while I was working on this video, and I do have one more after this outro. But real quick, if you enjoyed this video, remember to like, comment, subscribe, and hype the video, as it does help, as well as letting me know if there are any other specific things in Night City you want me to take a look at, or if you just want another video on the details of Night City. The next video I'll be releasing is about how the world of Fallout still being apocalyptic is really weird, which is something I've thought about for years. And if you're still watching, here's the quick final detail. CDPR added a mystery machine from Scooby-Doo Easter egg into the game. Scooby-Doo is literally my favorite childhood show, and it first aired on my birthday, just years before I was born. And that's all, folks. If you enjoyed what you saw, maybe check out some of my other videos like these. But if not, no worries. And until next time, I hope you all have a wonderful rest of the day, and stay awesome, y'all.